Ladies and gents, it's Wrestling Changed My Life. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Welcome back to Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. We appreciate the hell out of it. My guest today is Mario Morgan, who was a Division II national champion, is now a wrestling coach at Marysville College. But before that, wrestled for the esteemed Harvey Twisters. And I'm going to go on record and say that the Harvey Twisters are the best wrestling club in the United States. That is not an academy, right? This is literally a wrestling club on the south side of Chicago that's produced the likes of Joe Williams, T.J. Williams, Tony Davis, Cassio Perot, B.J. Futrell, Mario Morgan. The list goes on and on. You cannot understand how good this club is in the state of Illinois. And what's cool about it is that they're kind of like a closed loop system, right? You don't know a lot about them unless you're on the inside, and Mario was. So he talks a lot about that today, and we hope you enjoy the podcast. Now, before we take you to the show, our fan of the week this week goes to my brother, Tanner Warner. No, it's cheesy to give it to a family member, but he literally listens to every episode and has some great feedback. So thank you for tuning in. Now, without further ado, let's take you to this episode with Mario Morgan. Peace. Welcome to the podcast, my friend. How are you?
What's up? I'm doing good. Hanging in there.
Good, man. Before we talk wrestling, I gotta know, how did you pull off the role in Hardball, man? Because none of my friends believe me that there was a wrestler in that movie growing up, and I love that movie.
Hardball actually came about on kind of a weird story. I was growing up, I played baseball, football, wrestling. Actually, for a long time, I thought I'd play baseball in college. But then they had a tryout in Chicago, and I ended up going, and they probably took 40 or so of the top baseball players in the Chicagoland area. I made the cut somehow, and the rest is kind of history. Spent probably my entire half of my seventh grade on a movie set, which is pretty wild to get paid to be sitting around on a movie set with Keanu Reeves and some other actors, it was a great time. I met some of my best friends on that movie set, so it's cool.
So you say you go to a tryout and the rest is history, but what actually happened? So you make the cut, and then and at that point, are you in the movie for sure, or are they still whittling it down? Like, what took 6 months?
So they take 40, and what we did is they take those 40 baseball players, and they played pretty much all the baseball players outside of the main casted team. So those 40 players might have played on multiple teams. I ended up being lucky enough to be put on the Bouwas, which was the kind of the superstar team in the league in the movie. And so I ended up somehow finding a pretty good role to being one of the outfielders on there, making some cool diving catches, being in the dugout, dancing. And it was kind of weird when you're there because they don't kind of tell you what scene you're going to be in right away. You're kind of sitting and waiting, so it's a little anxious that way, especially when you're young. And then they kind of piecing it together, and they got some plan in their head, and it came out good.
Man, it did, because it's such a great movie. Man, G-Baby I love that character, man.
There's actually a funny story behind that character, too. So actually, probably 2 years or so before I went to the tryout, there was another casting for a movie, and I read for the G-Baby role, and actually was offered the role, but they didn't have a lead actor at that moment. So it's kind of this weird turn of, there's this weird turn of events. So when they came back 2 years later, I was too old for that role at that point then. But then it would just happen. Me and my dad was like, oh, let's go to this movie tryout again and see what happens. And yeah, it was still the same movie. We found out a little bit later.
That is such a small world, man. Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And your dad was the umpire in that game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So because you had to have how old I was, you had to have a parent on set with you every day. So my dad was there, and they didn't really have an umpire for the role. And my dad's a big time umpire in Illinois. So he had his stuff with him, and they were like, well, we might as well put someone that does this for real to make this look authentic. And then he ended up getting a role in it as well, and a really big role, forcing the kid to take off his headphones, the speaking role, and all of that. So just kind of happened. He was in the right place at the right time, and we both ended up in the movie.
Man, Mr. Twister threw in the umpire gear, just hoping to get a chance in there, baby, and he did, man.
Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't that he asked. He was kind of just there, and they had some like extra doing it that wasn't doing the right stuff, and he just made a comment like, "Hey, you guys know I'm a college, high school umpire. I could do this for you," and it worked out.
Man, what a cool story! And I mean, 6 months on the set—that's pretty incredible. Did you get to chat with Keanu Reeves at all, or did you ever interact with him?
I did. Yeah, I mean, we would be outside playing catch, and you'd see him. He'd come say hi and hang out with all the kids, and then you see he's a really nice guy, great guy. So we'd play football in between sets, in between takes when he had downtime. But then you'll see him make a switch and go into his like actor role and get in the right mindset. And it was kind of impressive to see, even at that age, that someone could make a switch and be full actor mode and then kind of decompress and hang out. So now when I see all the memes of Keanu Reeves, it makes sense to me why he's the way he is.
Man, that is such a cool story. And I got to tell you, every time as a kid I'd pull up that movie, I'm like, man, I know this kid. I didn't know you, but I knew of you from like the IKWF tournaments. They're like, you don't know him? I'm like, I swear to God.
Yeah, still to this day, I get people that's like, were you really wearing hardball? And I go, yeah, and I actually now have to keep like a picture from the scene on my phone because people don't believe me, or someone tells someone. I'm like, yeah, I really was.
Well, not only were you in it, man, you had that diving catch. You look up, smile at the camera, throw the ball back in. I remember it, man. It was cool. It was badass at the time. So
it absolutely was.
So you grew up in Chicago. Eventually, were a national champion in college, but grew up in Chicago and were a part of the famed Harvey Twister program, which, man, for kids who are not from Illinois, the dominance of this wrestling club is really hard to describe. And this was way before they even had like these academies and clubs that they have now. You know, I mean, just a couple guys who wrestled for the Harvey Twisters: Joe Williams, TJ Williams, Tony Davis, Mario Morgan, Isaiah White. So the program is unbelievable. So when was the first time you got involved at the Harvey Twisters?
Oh, I had to be 7? Yeah, 6 or 7, roughly about that time. And actually, I got involved because I was playing football, and one of my football coaches also coached for the Harvey Twisters. And then I would talk to my dad, and I was watching WWE, and I was like, that's real wrestling. And my dad was like, no, that's not real wrestling, even though my dad never wrestled or anything like that. And then he took me to a wrestling practice because I kept making fun of him, telling him that WWE was real wrestling. He's like, you can't hit someone with a chair and they not be hurt. So then I ended up doing the wrestling and kind of gravitated towards it over the years.
And what about the Harvey Twisters program? Because it's a closed door system, from what I know. Like, what's it like at a young age, and how are they so consistent? I mean, like, do they get more serious with the kids over time, or is it serious right when you get in there as a 7-year-old? And kind of take us in there a little bit.
Yeah, it is a close-knit system, so let's see what I can say. But no, realistically, it's a family. And it's not just a family of, like, the team you're on, or it's a family from the very first Harvey Twister that ever put on a singlet to the kid that's putting on their first singlet today. And I think that's what separates it from a lot of other, even these academies, to where you might get a kid that comes in that's already polished and groomed, and now they're wearing your singlet and representing your brand. But the Harvey Twister majority, probably over 90%, are homegrown, or as homegrown as they can be, which makes it this unique nucleus of, like, we've built this all together, and this is our ship, and we're going to ride with it till we die. I mean, a lot of us have tattoos that say Twister for life and T4L. And it really is that brotherhood that we could not see each other for years and get back together. And it's like we saw each other every day. And I think when you have that type of commitment to each other, even in practice when times were tough, even when we were little kids, we knew we were all together in this.
And you're right on in that. I would say almost 100% of the kids are homegrown through that system. I mean, no one really transfers clubs and the IKWF circuits to go to the Twisters. I've never heard of it. And
no, not really. I mean, we typically don't even allow people to try to jump in and try to come in and wear that brand, because I think even the one time when the IKWF and stuff was split and we came back together, I remember us having some T-shirts that says "Champions are made, not born," and I think that's something that we took as a philosophy. Is we're gonna home make our champions. We're not gonna just go and show up and just be good. It's going to take some hard work. It's going to take you grinding it out with your teammates. And I think it makes a better environment, a better culture. You don't feel like your teammates are going to jump and bail. I mean, you're all going to stick into it together.
Man, that is it. And you're talking about a time that I remember very specifically. I think you were 1 year older than me. And for the listeners, we're about to go deep in IKWF history here. So if you're not from Illinois, tune on out, baby, because we're talking about the best kids program in the country here and the IKWF. So 7th grade, you're in 8th grade. IKWF and IWF merge. And this is big news because at that time, the state of Illinois was split and the Twisters were with IWF. And really, the majority of the programs were IKWF, but you guys are one of the good ones coming in. And who was, like, when you were in 8th grade, who was on that Twisters roster? You had the Lloyd brothers, but who was all there, man?
I mean, that team was actually pretty unbelievable. When we look back at it, I was with some of my friends a couple weeks ago. We did a camp together. And that team, I mean, included myself, Cartiz Lloyd, Cameron Lloyd, BJ Futrell, Albert White, Thomas Webster. I mean, long list of phenomenal athletes that were even Illinois high school state champs. Christian Brantley went to Northern Iowa.
Who was the one who went to school in Indiana? He went to school, but he mainly wrestled in Illinois, but in high school he went to Indiana. I can't think of it.
Not John Burns. I'm drawing a blank. I picture in the face.
And Jerome Moore didn't go there, did he?
He didn't. He actually kind of came and joined us a little bit because he didn't start wrestling until high school. But he went to high school he didn't start wrestling until high school. But he came and practiced with us because he went to high school with Albert White at St. Rita.
The fact that he didn't start wrestling until high school disgusts me. All right, I'm going to tell you right now. that is a troubling fact. That is insanity to me. It's driving me nuts. I can't think of the guy who transferred.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
What the hell is it? Fuck. Anyway, I'll think of it. It doesn't matter. Bottom line, the team was stacked, and it's not that it was a one-time occurrence, man. It happens all the time, and one of the guys who kind of carried the torch after you and I were through was Isaiah White, who's at Nebraska right now. Do you know him at all? Are you close to him at all?
Oh, I know Isaiah really, really well. And the cool thing for that is, like, when I was coming through, Isaiah was still really little. So he was still kind of that young kid that was looking up at the guys that are wrestling and kind of growing and figuring out the sport and where they fit in the sport. So then I got to go off to college and wrestle and kind of have that, and those guys got to watch from a distance. And then every year we'd come back and see them in the summer and do camps, and like I'd come back and wrestle around with them at our camp. And got to watch him from a distance. And I actually got to coach against Isaiah, which was pretty cool multiple times. Especially when he was at Notre Dame College, I coached against him there. I got to coach against him even once he switched over to Nebraska at a couple of tournaments. And it's cool to see him grow. And we've had some great conversations about wrestling and his path and where he's at and where he's going. So it's cool to see those guys grow up that you saw when they first started, and still be friends with them to this day. And I don't even say like guys like that, like look up to me as like a mentor or thing. Someone might say that, but I think it's still just family. It's like your little brother having some success. And that's what's the cool thing to watch with him. And even BJ Futrell, I was at his wedding and hung out with him and the wedding party and everything all tripping. He just retired from trying to compete for Olympic and making world teams, and it's exciting for me to see him have some success too and do those things that he's done. And he's actually has a retirement party on my calendar in 2 weeks, so it's fun to have those things to come back together. And his wedding was really cool for all of us Harvey Twisters, because we got people like in his wedding party as Albert White, it's TJ Williams. I mean, you got myself there. You got so many people there. And like our whole family got to go out to Philadelphia and watch him get married and have that bond. And we were all Cassio Perot.
Oh yeah.
Went to Illinois. So all of us got to come back together for something and just kind of hang out and be friends and tour around the city. And so it's kind of cool to have that experience.
Man, how fun must that wedding have been, man? All those studs there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a great wedding, and he got all of his, even all the world team members that were there, and Jordan Burroughs and all of them were all kind of there and supporting. It was kind of cool to see, like, someone that I've known since he started wrestling, and it's been his goal to make an Olympic team, and to see him get close and have a bunch of injury stuff. But it's cool to see him continue on that path, and the things that he's going to do in the future is unreal.
Man, that kid is one of the greats to ever come out of Illinois. And
yeah,
I say that because as a kid, he was dominant, man. And
yeah, I mean, he won 5 kid state titles and high school state titles, and went on to Illinois and had a great career there. Had a couple injuries that derailed him a little bit, but just a phenomenal career, and even a phenomenal career after college.
No doubt about it, man. And we've actually exchanged some Instagram messages about getting him on, and I had to cancel one, but we will get him on here. And you know what's crazy to me is that how good some of these kids were is relative, because when we were in the IKWF circles, there were so many studs. Jimmy Kennedy, Futrell. I mean, it kind of numbs you to how good these guys are. But then when you look back, you know, I'm 30, you're probably
makes sense.
30. Yeah,
31.
It's like, dude, you look back, you're like, holy shit, man, this was insanity. How tough this was.
The funny thing is, like, I wrestled Jimmy Kennedy in my first IWF state finals.
Wow.
Jimmy Kennedy wrestled in the state finals, my very first one. I ended up as a kid wrestling 5 kid state finals, and he beat me in my very first one. I mean, it's
how made you win?
Crazy. I ended up winning 3. I lost my first 2, and then I won 3 after that.
Gotcha. Okay. So that makes sense. Now, before we go on to the rest of your career, we got to spend some time on Coach Q.
Coach Quint.
Coach Quint. That guy, he's been at the helm of the Harvey Twisters for a long time. And
very long time.
This guy is like a sage, man, like an old legend almost. Like, talk about this guy and like what's his demeanor like in a practice? I mean, what's his demeanor like after a tough loss? Like, what is this guy like, man?
Coach Quint, he's a living, walking legend, and he would not tell you that he is. He'd tell you he's just a normal guy, and that's the coolest thing about him. I mean, we go to his house. He fish fries. He's sitting around playing games with us and just being a normal guy. And that's like, he's like your dad of every kid that comes to that program. And he taught us so many things from not just about wrestling, but about, hey, when you walk into practice and you see some adults sitting there, you stop and say hi. Even if you're just walking by, you wave and say hi. You don't walk in with your head down and ignore adults. I mean, some little things like that. Or in the wintertime, you don't walk out of practice without a hat on your head. I think I got so many more of those mentor parenting legends. And to be honest, a lot of the kids that came to that program might not have had a father figure from single parent homes, or the father figure was in and out of their house. And he became dad. Or even for people like myself that had a great family system, he became my second dad. I knew at any moment I could call him today and he'd drop anything to do something for me. And when you have that type of support at the top, it's hard not to be successful. And he has a great wrestling knowledge, and he knows he doesn't know everything, but he brings guys like myself back that's gone farther than him, or TJ Williams or Joe Williams, or we call each other, Cassio Pearl, Charles Lloyd. We call each other, come back, and we spread that knowledge. I mean, we had a camp a couple weeks ago, and I'm there showing stuff that I'm working with my college guys, which allows him and his coaching staff there to come back and pass that on.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think of when I think of someone like that, is the life lessons more so than the technique and the X's and O's. You know, it's like
it's way more life lessons, and that's even when we were kids. And now when I look back and I see the things that we did as a kid, and then a lot of it was about building a culture before people knew about building a culture, and it was the life lessons about being an adult. And for the majority of the kids in the program, it was being a black kid in America. And I think we learned a lot about how to be a proper, respectful black kid in America at that time.
And I think, I mean, that's the whole point of it, is that, I mean, of the club, 98% African American, and it comes from a really a lot of times tough neighborhood. You and Futrell maybe not, but a lot of the guys on that team did, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, no, you're spot on. I mean, if you go to where they practice at and where we practice at there now, the building hasn't changed. I mean, it's in a very low income area. I mean, we get kids that have to go away to practice every day, and I mean, things weren't great for myself every time, even throughout the years, and someone from that program was always there to pick us up, even from my family, pick us up and bring us on. And I think that's what makes it special, is you knew you can go there and it's a safe place after school. You get your homework done, you can go to practice. And when you go to practice, you knew you were in a safe space. And Coach Quinn, he not only ran the team, but he ran the park district that we practiced out of. So, I mean, there's kids that were coming in there to play basketball that had nothing to do with wrestling, but he's also teaching them life lessons like, hey, don't walk in here with your pants sagging below your butt. Don't come in here cussing. So it was kind of the safe place for the community. And I think I've had some great friends. Even I look at Albert White. He grew up in that neighborhood. And people in that neighborhood that might have been either drug dealers or into some of the wrong stuff respected the people that were a part of that program, because they knew they were trying to do something and get out of the neighborhood, or just to better themselves. Or it was always that safe place that we knew that nothing was going to happen bad in that space.
And that's so important.
And it's because I mean, if you look, those people respected Quinn. I mean, they played basketball there too, and he ran that place the same way he would run his household. So it was cool.
So this was a guy who you would not mouth off to this guy. This guy was a disciplinarian, man. I mean,
yeah, and he's not the disciplinarian where you're like, he's yelling at you, but he came through with a stern voice, and you're like, hey, I'm not going to disappoint him. And it's because you knew he was giving everything he had. And most people don't realize he works a full-time job at Ford every day, and comes there after working a full-time job.
Really? I didn't know that.
And has a family and all those things. So when he has other responsibilities and he's choosing to spend his free time with us, we can be respectful enough to be proper community members and citizens and adults around him as well.
So how many days a week would you guys practice back in the, like, let's say you're in middle school and you're part of the Harvey Twisters. Are you guys going 5 days a week?
The younger kids, when they're early on, they're probably 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But once they got older, and probably once I got to the level I ended up getting to, we would end up being almost 5 days a week during wrestling season.
And would you say it's
kind of a slow progression?
Okay, that makes sense. Now, would you say it's like, yeah, there's the discipline and the structure, but I mean, every guy who comes through there, I mean, not every guy, but it seems like it is an elite wrestler. So, like, there must be some technique going on as well. So, like, how would they structure practice? Would it be a lot of live wrestling versus drilling, or like?
Oh, I can't give you all the secrets. And probably the one thing I can tell you is champions build champions. So, I mean, I think when you got the culture and you got highly competitive individuals in a space, I think that allows to help build something really special. So we had a lot of kids that were really talented athletes, and you put them around great coaches and great mentors, and the sky's the limit. I mean, you get some really good athletes. I mean, I know some of those guys today, like Cartoon Floyd. I could pull that kid off the street right now and enter him in a college tournament. I guarantee he'd be right in the thick of it. Untrained, any of that. If I get a month of him to get him in shape, he'd be right in the thick of it. So you got some highly athletic kids with some great coaching and some guys with some phenomenal talent. Sky's the limit. And then you got individuals that are competing with each other, and we probably felt like our practice room was harder than any tournament we were going to enter.
No question. And the last thing I'll say about the mystique of the Harvey Twisters is that they wouldn't go to every tournament. They would go to like select tournaments. Like they'd go to Tulsa in January, and you guys won Tulsa a number of times, which again, the other teams you guys were competing against were what I would call like an academy, where they're drawing from all over the state. You guys are literally drawing from a neighborhood and winning Tulsa. But why do you think they didn't go to all the, like an IK tournament every weekend and kind of chose their battles, so to speak?
I mean, if you really think about it, it's probably what more kids are switching to now. We were just ahead of the curve. Like, there's no reason to wrestle 150 matches in the 6th and 7th grade. Like, that weren't going to make you better. It was kind of a little bit of preserving your body a little bit and being fresh and training up until something, and then not just constantly training at that high level. So I think we figured out that at an early age. They're like, hey, we can train to Tulsa, but we don't have to go to every tournament. We can be select and pick and choose where we're going to go. We didn't have to see the same guys every weekend. That wasn't making us better. Mm-hmm. I think making us better was training properly, tailoring back our training and not being as intense at certain times to allow us to stay injury free. I mean, I could think of at that age, I mean, we didn't have really many big injuries. And I think a little bit of not competing every day and not having a kid with 120 matches at that age either leads to burnout or that kid getting to college and really not liking it because they're just so tired of the sport.
I think that's great advice, and I think something we're going to see more of now. Now, before I move on, because I do want to talk about Mount Carmel and your career at UNO, I just want to say for the folks who still might not know who this club is, the Harvey Twisters at one point in time had two wrestlers wrestling in the Division I finals, and that's TJ Williams versus Tony Davis from the same club, people. All right? So sit back and just let that soak in a little bit and do some Googling on these guys. It's really a phenomenal club, and I was just really lucky to see it growing up. So it's cool to hear about some of these stories. Now,
yeah, I mean, it's even impressive to know that those guys are still best friends. They do camps together.
Really?
I mean, you can get a TJ Williams, Tony Davis camp if you need one.
Wow. So they're still friends to this day, even though they were scrapping it out. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were one family. I mean, there was times where we had to compete against each other in high school and college, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think we all classify ourselves as Harvey Twisters first. Before even, I mean, I could ask Tony Davis and TJ, and they'd say they're Harvey Twisters first, even beyond the Northern Iowa and Iowa.
Twister for life, man.
Twister for life.
So you went to Mount Carmel. which is another one of the most legendary wrestling programs in Illinois. At one point in the early 90s, had won like 5 or 6 state titles in a row. How long was Bill Wick there versus Ben Gerdes when you were at Mount Carmel?
So Bill Wick was there my freshman year. So he was our head coach my freshman year. And then Gerdes was helping assistant at that point. And then a transition happened. A lot of things happened, and Gerdes ended up becoming the head coach after that. Got it.
So Bill Wick was the Olympic coach in 1972 for Dan Gable. You know, was that obviously on his way out. He was an older man at that time, and maybe not the highlight of your career, knowing that you never won a state title. But just talk to us a little bit about like your junior and senior year. Like, what were some of your state tournament brackets like? Because it was nutty at that time. They weren't seeding the tournament. It was 24 kids, and you couldn't wrestle back unless the guy made the semis. It was absolute lunacy what they were doing.
It was a madhouse.
Madhouse.
That time of Illinois wrestling, and a lot of people don't realize, was really the turn of like even the freestyle Greco scene of Illinois wrestling, of dominance. As I say, they always were good, and we had good athletes. But I think the culture of the Illinois wrestling switched around that time. But I mean, if you look at like the national ranking at that time, probably my senior year bracket had probably 4 or 5 guys ranked in the top 15 in the country. So it was crazy. And we were all in the same bracket throughout our entire high school career. We all grew together, from myself, Jimmy Kennedy, Nick Fanthorpe, who went to Iowa State,
legend.
Dalton Bullard, Cal Hudder went to Old Dominion. Of course, Jimmy Kennedy was there. I mean, just so many guys in that weight range, either one weight up or one weight down, that were just phenomenal athletes and phenomenal wrestlers that breeded a culture of like competitiveness. I mean, you had to get better because you never knew who you were going to face at that time at the state tournament. And I think it made it an extremely hard state tournament.
No question. No question. Yeah. And some of those names you're rattling off, I kind of forgot about. Like Kyle Hudder, man, that guy was a great wrestler for Providence.
Yeah, I mean, me and he'll probably wrestle the conference rivals. So we wrestled so much in high school. It was crazy, and I was actually really glad to see he landed well down helping out in Old Dominion and found good. And we actually, for the first time, probably 2 years ago or so, we met at the NWCA conference and like got to sit down and talk and say hi and had a drink together. So it was a cool experience that way from someone you kind of like competed against so much.
Scrapped against, man.
We had some battles.
Who did you lose to in state your senior year?
I got headlocked by Dalton Bullard.
Oh, man. Okay.
Headlocked by Dalton Bullard. Yeah, that was tough. I ended up taking fifth. I got headlocked by him, and I think I lost to Cal Hudder. I don't remember.
Dude, at that point, it's a shit show at that point.
Actually, to be honest, the crazy thing is I didn't place until my senior year.
What?
When the tournament was structured, I didn't place until my senior year of high school. Just
wow.
And one year I got pinned by Kennedy. He called me in like a cement mixer type. I don't remember what it was. 3/4 Nelson. And I mean, it was a grind. Assembly Hall in Illinois was not my favorite place to wrestle, to be honest.
Dude, it was a grind, and when I was in there, it was still 2 divisions, and it's like it's like now it's like a 3-day tournament. Back then, it was like a half day. It's like a day and a half, maybe.
A day and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
2
man,
divisions, and to be honest, though, Class A at that time, they had maybe 2 or 3 elite level guys, and the rest were kind of guys that were middle of the road. But the big class was basically like one class, and it was a grind, and it was. I mean, I saw state champs return the next year and get upset first round and not be able to wrestle back. Like it was a wild time to be down there.
Wild time, man. And so, after your senior year, did you ever question if you still wanted to wrestle or not?
I don't know if there was a question if I wanted to wrestle. I think probably leading into my junior year, I didn't know what sport I wanted to play. I was fairly good at baseball. I was on a really good team. Like, my high school team was just as good as my wrestling team. Of course, I played football and all those things at Mount Carmel. So I just didn't know. I wasn't as focused on like exactly where I'm going to go with it. And then I kind of started to make some things of like, how can I use this sport or use athletics to help me get an education? And wrestling became the proper choice of that, because I figured I can go to a really good school and have them help pay for that and try to set myself up for the future. So around when I started to make those type of decisions, wrestling became the sport of choice for me for college. So I don't think it ever became of like, I don't want to wrestle. I think it was choosing what path to go down.
Gotcha. And then what schools were you considering your senior year and junior year?
Yeah. Around that time, I visited Nebraska, Lincoln. That was really cool, especially at the time Tony Davis was actually a volunteer coach there. So that was a strong interest for me. I was strongly considering University of North Carolina at the time. Buffalo. And then Nebraska, Omaha came in at the tail end. Like, I was actually really strongly considering going to University of North Carolina, the Tar Heels. And then I was considering North Carolina State, because that's actually where Tony Davis ended up landing. And one of my best friends, Travis Hammonds, ended up going there. A whole nother story there.
That's the dude from Indiana. That's the guy I'm thinking of, dude. Right?
No, you're thinking of a different. Travis Hammonds went to Hubbard High School and then ended up going to won senior nationals and all this, and then ended up going to North Carolina State, and some things happened and came back home. But,
okay. Was Coleman Scott at North Carolina when you were looking at the school?
No, it was before then. Before Coleman Scott, the previous coach before him.
Gotcha.
But then ended up finding the right fit for me at Nebraska Omaha, which led to some phenomenal things there. But I think I took the mature decision in college to say, don't just go to a school just because of their XYZ name. Because it's this big D1 state school to go there. I made a decision like, what's going to be the right culture? What's going to have the right team for you to be successful? But at the end of the day, after 5 years or so, that sport's going to end for you. So what's going to set you up for the future? What has the right academic programs? What has students, athletes graduating? So I was mature enough to make that decision, and I went and found a home at the top NCAA Division II program, and it was a perfect fit for me. And I think I was glad I did, especially looking back, seeing guys that might have went to a smaller D1 school just because they wanted to go D1. And that was my goal. That was actually the only Division II school I looked at was Nebraska Omaha. But when I found out, I was like, they won 3 national championships in a row. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Would I want to go there and win some NCAA national championships and have a great time and have a great experience, or maybe go to some mid-level D1 school and hope to make it and not have a team that's competing for a national championship, and have other individuals competing for that same goal, or there's a handful of us that might be All-Americans in D1 or maybe compete for a national championship if they're lucky. And I think that helped propel my wrestling to be even better than I probably would have been in maybe at another place, because I had like-minded individuals training to be the best in their weight class and our team to be the best. I think that helped drove my career.
Man, you said it in that the atmosphere and kind of the competitiveness of a team is everything, man, because we've all seen a lot of great Illinois guys go to maybe a mid-major, and just because the enthusiasm's low at the program or whatever it is, it just kind of doesn't work. And I don't understand it, honestly. There should be way more Illinois Division I All-Americans. But to your point, though, you got to UNO, and everyone there is going for a championship. And coming from a guy who you'd only been on good teams, and dude, let me tell you, it's a lonely spot being on a miserable team, man. And I knew that wasn't
the right culture for me to be successful. I knew I couldn't go and be the only guy. I knew in that atmosphere I would end up getting lazy or not being motivated. I'm a team guy. I want my team to do well. I want everyone around me to get better. I'm going to try to boost the morale when things going down. So I knew I had to be around a team and a culture that was going to, one, allow me to be better and compete with me, but then also me be able to push them too.
Absolutely. Now, did they bring back wrestling, or is it still dropped?
No, it's still dropped. Yeah, so
that's
no
a
wrestling
travesty.
up there.
Absolute I mean, because that was a program where they were sponsored by Adidas. Like, it was a team where you could go and get like legitimate kind of that big school feel. But man, I cannot believe that.
There's multiple Division I teams that would not come down and compete against us. I mean, we were lucky enough that Northern Iowa to come down and for 1 year, and then they chose not to come back after that. I mean, even Nebraska Lincoln at that time really didn't want to duel us.
Wow.
Because there's a fear of losing there. I mean, there's a legit fear of losing at the level team we had. I mean, we had multiple guys that could have been NCAA Division I All-Americans. And I mean, myself have wrestled multiple times D1 All-Americans and won those matches. So it's scary for them.
Yeah.
When you have a lower level, and they have no benefit. It's not a win-win for
It's
them.
a lose-lose for them. Yeah.
And it's a lose. Even if it's close, they look bad. If they lose, they look really bad. And even for that, the difference would be at that time, their athletes didn't get penalized by losing to a Division II opponent. So now the way their ranking system goes, they look bad if they lose to a Division II opponent. So when we had our tournament there, we would get all the D1 teams, probably the toughest tournament our Kaufman brand there in the country in college wrestling at the time. Because we had the national champs from every division, from junior college to D1, bringing their varsity lineups to our tournament. So
the Kaufman brand.
The Caravan brand. So, I mean, you got big time matches early in the year at that tournament. Like, if Flow Wrestling was around, they would have been all over this thing.
No doubt, man.
But the thing was, you got to come there and face good people. And, like, we have multiple guys from our program that was winning this thing with the Oklahomas, the Iowa States, the Iowa bringing their top-tier starters there. And just being in contention with those guys really let us know that we can compete at any level.
And I mean, let's not sell it short. You were 20-5 against Division I guys in college, and there's no doubt that you guys would have held your own, probably against even top 15 teams. Who knows? I mean, maybe even.
No, I mean, someone else today, I said I would, without a doubt, put some of my teams, actually probably all my teams, in the top 20 in Division I, but from top 10 to top 15 on certain years. I would say my sophomore year team, where we set the point record in the NCAA for Division II that probably would never get broken, was easily a top 10 D1 team. I mean, just the athletes that were on there and the level they were and the guys they even beat that school year is second to none.
Well, and let's not forget, like, at that time, the Division III power, Wartburg, I know they would have been up there too. They were legitimate too. They had some really good guys. They had some guys from Georgia who used to be Twisters, right? Carrington Banks. So I mean,
yeah,
those guys were good too, man. So let's not forget about the D2 and D3 programs.
No, I mean, Wartburg. I mean, we would wrestle. We'd go up and wrestle Augsburg in Minnesota, and they beat us my junior year.
Dang.
I mean, and they're getting guys that are falling out of Minnesota and all those things into there. And so there's some great wrestling. And I'm a big preacher of telling guys when I talk to them, it's like, don't get settled on the D1, like, dream of saying I have to go D1. You can go somewhere else and have a phenomenal experience, if not better, culture and environment, and still be an NCAA national champ. I'll still be able to walk around, and you walk in my office, I'm looking at it right now, 3 NCAA All-American plaques.
Let's Let's go.
I mean, so when you can see those things and you have those stamps, it means something. No one's ever gonna come back and be like, you weren't that. So I think you can definitely find some of those other tiers and some guys that can find some success and still have success after. I mean, if you look at the world team over the last few years, there's been a Division II guy on the U.S. world team. You look at Travell Delagna from Nebraska Kearney. You look at Les Sigmund, who went to UNO. Some of those heavyweights has been through there.
Kamaru Usman. Don't forget about him.
Kamaru Usman in the UFC. You get some great guys. I mean, you look at John Jones. Went to junior college in
Iowa Central.
Iowa Central. I mean, you get some guys that can be great athletes at some of these non-D1 powerhouse schools or even mid-major D1 schools that are doing some phenomenal things, and it's really impressive to see.
And they're bringing a lot of programs back, it seems like, as well. I wouldn't be doing us justice if we didn't get into your competitive career a little bit. So you, at the Division II level, national champ your senior year, runner-up your sophomore year, second your junior year, third your sophomore year. Now, talk to us about like your mindset going into competition. So, for example, your senior year, there's a great video online. It's you versus the number 2 guy. Quarterfinals your senior year, last chance. Like, what are you thinking in the tunnel 15 minutes before the match? Are you thinking back to your time as a Twister? Are you trying to stay calm? Like, what was your mindset and self-talk like 15 minutes before a match?
The funny thing is, I ended up, we talked about in our program, is having a ritual. So we would, having a ritual, but also be flexible with your ritual. So I would warm up with the same partner. Cody Garcia was a multiple-time national champ, now the head coach at Baker College, another great NAIA program. Was my teammate. He was a weight below me for a lot of my career and even coached after. So, but we would warm up together every time. We'd wrestle around. I'd get a good sweat, and sometimes I'd be like, if I got my butt kicked by him in warm up, I'm going to be feeling good today because I got that breath out. So I'd go through kind of some of that. And then for me, it was kind of put some headphones on and not think about wrestling, and not think about it and put too much stress or worry into it. And then kind of show up in the moment. But then there was 2 matches before me. I'm going to take off my sweatpants. I'm going to be in my shorts and kind of that ritual of always going through that. So nothing felt out of the ordinary. But then my coaching staff, they really focus on what does each individual guy need. So some guys, you might come up and they need a slap in the face before they walk out on the mat. For me, it was like, hey, I need you to come up and joke around with me. We might laugh and talk and make some jokes. And then right before I go out, it was like, hey, you're the baddest man alive. And kind of some of those self-talks and going through that. And I think through the years, I figured out that I still had to have that confidence, swagger, that cockiness a little bit, for me to perform my best. But I also still had to be focused and ready to go.
So it was more about kind of taking your mind off of it as opposed to really drilling into. No,
I wasn't one. To be honest, I wasn't one that liked to watch or know about what my opponent was going to do. I think I performed better when it was like, hey, I need to focus on setups. I need to really make sure my hand fighting's good, or make sure my right leg shot defense is good today. And if I'm doing my things, I'm dictating the match. So when I can put that guy on his heels and on defense, I'm in a good place. If I'm worried about this guy shooting a high crotch on me, I'm defensive and not attacking and not scoring points. The more points I can score, the better chance I got at winning. So a lot of times it'd be like, hey, I need to score twice in the first period. I need 2 takedowns and in the first period. And if I can get those things, I'm wrestling with a lead. And I always thought if I had a lead at the start, there's not many guys in the country that can come back and beat me. But if I let this match go 0-0 into the third period and it's 20 seconds left, they could potentially get a takedown on me. So if I'm wrestling my matches and performing at my best and taking care of the things I can take care of, controlling what I can control, I'm going to be in good shape. I'm going to win those matches 90% of the time.
So those were some of your kind of markers where you knew you had to be at. Now, I know we have about 10 minutes left. I want to hit two last questions. The first is, now that you're a coach, like what are some things looking back on when you were in high school and college that you wish you'd have known now that you have some perspective from the sport, being a little bit removed as a competitor?
I think some of the stuff I learned in college. One, growing up in Illinois, everyone knows the state of Illinois can wrestle on their feet. That's one of the things that they do really well and why they're really good at style and Greco is we can feel like we can take just about anyone down. I think even that's the Harvey Twister philosophy. Learning how to wrestle on the mat, that made a huge jump in my college career. Once I figured out how to get off the bottom and then how to turn someone on top. So I think definitely high school kids being able to wrestle in every position makes you very dangerous and not just be one focused. But then also the mental aspect of the sport. You might not be the best guy on the technique wise or in the best shape, but if you go on with a philosophy or you're wrestling your style and you're dictating matches and you're in the right mental headspace, you're hard to be beat. I mean,
so it's a self-belief kind of thing.
Yeah, self-belief. But it could be even things outside of wrestling. I knew there's times where, like, if I came home and, like, after practice and my room was junky, like my bed wasn't made and my homework wasn't done, I was up thinking about those things instead of just relaxing and getting away from the sport in college. So realizing that, hey, I had to take care of the schoolwork. I had to take care of, like, my living arrangements and making sure I'm at a good place around good people. For me to perform my best even in wrestling, because wrestling's a sport where you take that with you even after practice, because you're dieting, you're eating, all those things continue even after you leave practice, unlike other sports like maybe basketball or something. Wrestling, you live that lifestyle 24 hours in a day. So you got to take care of those little things to make sure you're not stressing and worried, because if you're stressing and worried, that's going to carry over into you stressing and worried right before you walk out on the mat.
Yeah, and man, well said. Now, the last question always is, like, if you had to look back on the sport, and I want to throw a little bit of twist in this. So, like, how did wrestling change your life? But also, like, talk about the role your dad and your parents played in your life, because, man, you're Mr. Twister, legendary guy on the message boards, on the social networks. I love that guy. And even as an announcer and a referee in Illinois. So maybe just kind of weave in both. Like, what's the impact wrestling's had in your life? And then same with your dad. Like, how has he influenced your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say wrestling didn't change my life. Wrestling has put me where I am now in a career where I work at Maryville University, not just as a coach, but I actually work out of our president's office here doing communications. And it's kind of surreal to say that wrestling got me here, but it absolutely did. I finished my college career. Maryville University brought a wrestling team down. I started working doing video editing and all those things here, but wrestling brought me here. If I didn't have wrestling, I would have never been in those positions to now have a phenomenal career and a family and a daughter that's phenomenal. But wrestling provided all those things, and definitely say using the sport, don't let it use you. Even as a coach, you can't use that. There has to be a give and take. So I want to make sure I use the sport to get the most out of it. And it's gotten me an undergrad degree, a master's degree from here at Maryville, without the student loans that most individuals would have to get those things, especially from coming from someone with not the highest socioeconomic status. To use the sport for those things more than pays off the amount of trips my parents took on with me to Tulsa and all those things. And if you guys say the same, makes it worthwhile. But my parents played a huge role in it too. I mean, they sacrificed. They probably took out loans without even telling me to get me to certain tournaments and driving across the country. And for them to do those things for kids, and me now being a parent of a 5-year-old, is I can see why they did it, and I can see the benefit of it. Or sending me to private school, which is 30 minutes from my house, where I could have went to the school there. Them making those sacrifices at times to drive me all over, and I was blessed to have some parents that were able to do that. But you don't have to have two parents, and I know individuals that don't have that same nuclear system that I did, but they have the same drive to get to those levels. And that drive can take you a lot of places. I mean, there's a phenomenal story of an NFL athlete right now that played basketball in college and then tried out for a JUCO football team, didn't get any college scholarships, but then just walked up to the Cleveland Browns and he got to play in the NFL game because he had the drive and the determination to be successful. So that drive and determination can be amazing when you don't give up and don't quit. One of the things my parents always said, hey, if you start a season or if you start something, you finish it. No matter if you hate it in a moment, in the middle of it, you're always going to finish. And that's something I still carry with me. If I'm going to start something, I'm going to finish it. And at the end, if I realize that, hey, it isn't what I want to do, completely okay. But if I start it, I'm going to finish it until the end.
That's it, man. I think wrestling instills that in, and certainly your parents had a lot to do with it as well, man. And I could talk a lot about how, like, you look back at my mom, single mother, no idea how she drove me to those tournaments and practices, man, but she just did and got it done, and we're all grateful for it, man. And I'm kind of bummed out. I got to cut this short, man. I got to jump here, but man, a real pleasure to have you on. You know, hopefully we can get some of the Twisters on here. Like, man, even Coach Quint to get on here, man. Let's hear from that guy. So it's been a lot of fun, man. I greatly appreciate you taking some time for us today, my friend.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for inviting me on. And it's great to wrestling and have some people that are champions of the sport out there that's really branching out and doing some amazing things. So I appreciate you as well.
That's the end of this episode, but definitely not the end of the show. For more episodes, please go to wrestlingchangemylife.org. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a star rating. Show the love, baby. Show the love. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Peace.